G'day guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Wildcard. Thank you for being here and giving me the pleasure and privilege to entertain you as we talk about the greatest sport in the history of the world, rugby. And it's Tuesday, so it's News Day. Let's take a look at what happened last week in the world of union. So first up, Rugby World Rankings has shifted once again. New Zealand beating the Springboks at Johannesburg. The absolute hell on earth. New Zealand managed to claw themselves back into the win bracket, moving back ahead to the 4th spot ahead of England. And on the other match that was played on the weekend, the Wallabies played Pumas in Argentina, losing to Michael Cheika's men in a historical loss, biggest margin in the history of the two teams, against Australia that is, and saw Australia drop to 7th, the lowest ever in the history of the Wallabies. Yeah. And the media, it's all about New Zealand. No one cares that the Wallabies dropped to 7th lowest. Actually, some people do care, but you know, nobody reads it. So let's have a look at the some news before we talk about the two big matches on the weekend. So there was some talk about the Australian rugby. Basically the CEO came out in June, basically talked about how he wants to take Australian rugby away from Super Rugby. He wants to withdraw from Super Rugby because the deal is currently going to end next year in 2023. So he wanted to move out of the deal and start a competition for themselves. And he kind of like clarified a bit more as to why he wanted to do that. Because apparently, as the current setup of Super Rugby, the revenue is basically independently negotiated between their own unions. So Australia Rugby obviously have Rugby Australia actually has a deal with Channel 9 and Stan Sport, which sees them $36.3 million in their deal, and that's what they get. Pretty bad. But the New Zealand Rugby has a much better deal that they have for themselves. With the partnership with Sky Sport, New Zealand Rugby gets $98 million. And obviously, the CEO of Australian Rugby don't see this as a fair outcome. So he kind of wanted basically said that he's looking to get a equal partnership with a 50-50 split on the revenue. So he's basically saying, New Zealand, the fact that you have to negotiate a better deal with your TV deal, you're going to have to give us a huge chunk of that to make this deal even. Yeah. Not to mention the fact that the Australian teams are underperforming and the majority of, finals are played with the New Zealand teams. Let's forget about all that imbalance. Just make sure that they get the money. So that's basically where it's at. And you let me know what you think down in the comments. But yeah, so just give you an idea, if this is what he's asking is kind of basically the original Super Rugby deal, when he had South Africa, Argentina, Japan were all involved, the revenue was shared evenly between the participating unions. So despite the fact that Japan and Argentina was obviously a much smaller portion of the pie, they got an even revenue split. So yeah, so that's kind of like what Rugby Australia is asking. But then again, New Zealand Rugby is also paying for the new teams, Moana Pacifica and Fijian Endura as well. So maybe Rugby Australia would like to chip in. I don't know. You want an equal partnership, you gotta also pay for the development, right? So yeah, it's a bit of a weird decision. I do think that it's probably just a bluff. It's really unlikely that Rugby Australia withdraw from Super Rugby, because quite frankly, I won't be watching if you withdraw from Super Rugby. It's so bad. Good luck. And also, obviously, the first test match of the weekend, Wallabies versus, Wallabies, the quality of the players as shown here. Wallabies versus the Los Pumas. Biggest loss in the history of the Wallabies. I honestly couldn't believe the result. I honestly couldn't believe how poor this game was for the Wallabies. The Pumas had a pretty straightforward strategy, just to kick the ball behind and chase it down, whether it be a high ball or a grubber kick, and again and again and again and again and again, the Wallabies seems unable to cope with basic kicking. And the Pumas again and again and again was just able to scoop up that bounce and get over for a try. It was really preposterous how poorly this game was for the Wallabies. Really embarrassing. Yeah, don't know what else to say. Obviously, Michael Cheika was the head coach of the Pumas, and the thing that was, yeah, so here's some, just to give an idea how preposterous this was. It's kind of a bit out of order. One of the tries that the Pumas scored, right, the center, Juan Imhoff, he literally pulls his quad after making a break. He holds up, he grabs his own quad, and then he like hobbles a little bit, and then continued running, and started like running again, and still scored a try. So you're telling me this guy literally can pull his quad and still score a try? Nobody was able to tackle him. It's just blowing my mind. Well, obviously he got tackled like before the try line, and then he still reached over. But nobody was able to shut him out for a try. Blew my mind, right? He literally had a one leg, and the Wallabies still not able to stop him from scoring. Really, really, really bad. So obviously, the one thing that came out that I think he has to be, right? He has to be the only person in Australia who shed a tear after this loss. Because I was so angry, I didn't even care. I honestly, yeah. It really shows how passionate Michael Cheika was as a coach for the Wallabies. He basically said that after the game he was cheering when they scored that final try. He was cheering, but then he started crying because he obviously felt that pain in his heart. The former head coach of the Wallabies, to see how far his own team has fallen, and obviously, he's not to mention that he's a proud Australian, to see his own national team lose so much. He hurt him a bit. He hurt himself quite a bit, and I feel like he's probably the only only Australian who shed a tear that day. And it tells you like the passion that Michael Cheika has for the team. I've always felt he was undermined by Rugby Australia. He had, with the Israel Folau deal, he really got, hands tied going into the 2019 Rugby World Cup, to be really frank. And, it shows his passion, and, I thought that was very touchy from him. On the other hand, Dave Rennie, obviously very, very not happy. Some of the comments he came out with, basically not very, very disappointing, not good enough. And he obviously pointed out the kicking game was an issue that he felt like the game fell apart. He also mentioned the physicality was an issue for the Australian team, something that was persistent following the England test matches. And also, he did not use the mounting injury list on the Wallabies sides as an excuse. So, which is really good. I did agree when Dave Rennie he did talk about how they still had the talent to perform. I did agree that we still have plenty of talents left over, despite the injuries, to get the job done and not get flogged at least. Like, we could be a close game. Did not think that we were going to get flogged with the talents that we had on the field. So, yeah, that's that. So, obviously, with more injuries in the Wallabies sides, there has been talks of potentially Kurtley, Beale returning, and Bernard Foley might be returning for the 10 jersey for the Wallabies record, because Foley did have an interview a few months ago where he talked about desires to play for the Wallabies again whilst he's playing in Japan. So with the results, it looks like the Wallabies might have to open the door a little bit more to allow some more people to return. They also believe that Rory Arnold, who played against Argentina, could be recalled by his Japanese club, so he won't be staying very long. Obviously, Quade and Samu Kurevia both out injured, so that opens 2 slots essentially for the Wallabies to fill from international based players. Second test match, the match made in hell, in the cauldrons of fire. Ellis Park, Johannesburg. The All Blacks walked in, and the All Blacks walked out the winners. Yeah, this was a game I felt it was really disappointing if you're a Springbok fan. The All Blacks took an early lead, And the Springboks play brilliant rugby. Absolutely some of the best rugby I've seen from the Springboks since Rassie Erasmus taken over. Like he won a World Cup, and I felt like, you know, the middle section of the test was probably some of the best attacking Springbok rugby we've ever seen from under Rassie Erasmus. And then as a result, the Springboks actually overcame a huge deficit. I think it was 13 points. Might have been bigger than that at one point. So a huge deficit where people, if it looked like the Springboks probably not going to come back. And then they not only they closed out the deficit, but they took the lead, 23-21. And Beauden Barrett had a yellow card. So you look like the Springboks had an easy cruise home in the last 15 minutes or so. But maybe the pressure got them a little bit. Just way too much kicking. The Springboks did not look like they wanted the ball. Every time, literally, they would get a penalty, kick the penalty out for a maul. No penalty from the maul, let's box kick it. You know, get the ball, immediately box kick, and it really was something that the New Zealanders more than happy to run the ball out of their own 22. And as a result, Rieko Ioane carved up the Springboks, and Adi Savia followed up, and New Zealand went through 2 tries in the last 10 minutes to win the match, 35-23. So I think the Springboks had a bit of a, so the reports came out, you know, Sia Khaleesi admitted that the Springboks fell asleep, but I did feel like maybe the pressure got at them a little bit. It's not just the case of fell asleep, it was more of a case of the Springboks had a strategy, and then they just went into the shells and executed the strategy quite poorly, to be frank. That's what I felt happened. So going into this game, obviously, both teams have made some changes. The Springboks had Bungi Bonabi injured. So injured during training. So Joseph Dweba steps in for the Springboks. For the All Blacks, there were some concerns for Will Jordan. He was absent during training. And as a result, apparently he had a stomach bug. So he was had a mild stomach issue. That's why he couldn't play. So yeah, just in case you don't know, if you ever go to South Africa, especially if you're a Kiwi, in your pamphlet, in your little guide notes that they give you before you board the plane, the stuff that you need to know in South Africa, including, you know, the emergency numbers and stuff in those pamphlets. If you actually read it, Will, you would have said in the pamphlet, do not eat the burgers. Okay? Do not eat the burgers in South Africa, especially in Johannesburg. But he obviously made the mistake and tried the burgers, and obviously had a bit of a stomach issue. But good thing is he was okay to play on Saturday. But next time, just make sure you read those pamphlets they give you. Quite important for you to know everything before you head overseas. Yeah, just a reminder, guys, read those pamphlets. Next up, obviously, like I was mentioning, during that middle period of the game, Lukaku Arm was absolutely superb for the Springboks. Some of the best attacking strategy the Springboks has ever seen. And also this picture, I just noticed, Willie le Roux is getting his dick grabbed. Yes, he's getting his dick grabbed. I just noticed this picture. But yes, he's getting a dick grab on the background. Regardless, Lukaku Arm scored. He set up, I think he scored a try and set up a try for, he almost set up a try for Mapimpi, and he was just absolutely superb. He had to play winger due to Jesse Krill getting knocked out early in the game, and just probably should be playing winger altogether. Some of the stats that came out of this game, 137 run meters from 8 carries. Huge numbers from him. So obviously he had 4 line breaks from the winger position, and this was the highest stats for a line break stat for a Springbok player in the match since 2019, and the previous person was Damien Valemsa versus Canada, essentially, a tier 2 nation essentially. And also so the last player from any nation to make more line breaks was actually Samu Kerevi, and it was in 2016 versus Argentina. So yeah, this was actually such a good performance. It was like, it actually surprised me why he's not selected to just play wing, because a lot of times at center he doesn't get the ball that much and not having the space to work with. So I feel like a huge talent being wasted at outside center where he's not giving the space to fully utilize that speed and and agility. And obviously, there was a lot of talk about, like we mentioned, Bungi Bunabi was injured during training, so Joseph Dweba was put into his place, and obviously Bunabi was scheduled to be in the starting position at number 2. And Malcolm Marx started a brilliant game, man of match performance last week for his 50th test. So a lot of people was expecting Malcolm Marx to be coming off the bench in the starting position, but then he was left on the bench. So there were obviously, two ways to look at these things. So obviously there were people asking why didn't they just start with him, because Joseph Dweba did look like he was nervous once again. He has shown a lot of emotions before, being nervous playing for the Springboks, and once again this game he looked nervous, lineouts not going straight, and he was taken off really early in the game. I saw like 30th minute or something, less than 30 minutes, I think like 25 minutes or something, and it was taken off, being replaced by Malcolm Marx. So yeah, a lot of people were asking why wasn't Marx being put on the field to start with in the first place. So to avert that deficit, obviously this question was asked in the post-match interview as well. And so the title, the article itself didn't actually say the reason why specifically, but the way this article is worded, things got awkward when Nienaber quizzed on Dweba's selection. So just look at the answer Nienaber gave, right? He basically said that there's always a rugby reason why we did that, but that's privilege. So he's not going to disclose the reason why he put Dweba on the field after being asked, and then said the players all know, every single player knows why we went that route, and there's a very logical reason why we did that. So he kind of like clarified himself afterwards, after saying that it was a privilege reason, and then clarified himself afterwards. So the way that this article kind of phrased it, things got awkward, and it didn't say specifically, is that, yeah, it's essentially alluding to the quota for the South Africans. So yeah, it's not publicly stated, but the speculation based on some of the stuff I've read online is that it's to do with the number of black and white players Springboks is allowed to play each match, and that's the reason that he had to be on the starting position, because of the quota. So yeah, let me know if that's true or not, but that's kind of like my understanding of what this article was like alluding to, with the awkward answer sort of phrasing. But yeah, let me know your thoughts if that's what actually happened. Obviously, there are some guy actually put some interesting data here. Foster currently has a higher win percentage over Nienaber, despite being called to resign. But the caveat is that Foster has played a lot of easy matches last year against Tier 2 nation. They played America, they played, Tonga last year, who didn't, because of COVID, couldn't even have access to most of their players. They literally have to play amateurs. And a lot of these easy games filled the majority of the All Blacks wins. So despite having a higher win rate, they play much easier opponents than the Springboks. The Springboks had to play the Lions tour. The Springboks had to play, basically no easy games. They had maybe a couple trial games against Georgia, and that's pretty much the only thing that was kind of easy since Nienaber took over. And they have obviously 2020 completely off, didn't play any games for the Springboks. So ever since the return, the Springboks has been just being hammered with tough games every week, each and every week. So despite having a higher percentage, the Springboks does have a better record against tougher teams. That's the difference. 65% one, obviously the highest person is Fabien Gauthier for France. And for our second highest, Eddie Jones at 67 on third place, Foster fourth, Nienaber fifth, Michael Cheika after taking up Argentina on sixth. So Nienaber is fifth, Cheika at sixth, but he's only played 5 games. Gregor Townsend from Scotland. Next up, Wayne Pivac from Wales. After that, Dave Rennie at 40% for the Wallabies. Crowley, I actually don't know who Crowley is. Is that the Italian coach? On the bottom of the list, 36%. But yeah, that's the list for the top teams. But yeah, really interesting stuff that kind of came out of this this Joseph Dweba selection there. So obviously Nienaber, I was questioned again about the 6-2 split on the bench. Jesse Krill, the second person to get knocked out by Caleb Clark. Second winger to get knocked out by no winger. Faf Clark obviously got knocked out, and then Jesse Krill gets knocked out this week, last weekend actually, by Clark again. And obviously there was some talk about the risk of running too many forwards on the bench, and obviously Nienaber talked about, you know, how that's a risk that they're happy to take because they, you know, this is not the first time they play the 6-2 bench split, and based on their records, they play 45 games, about 30 of those, so like 1 out of 3, you know, 2 out of the 2/3 of the games they play with extra forward on the bench. Obviously they won the World Cup and the British Irish Lions tour, so there's something that this is a calculated risk that he talks about. But yeah, both the test matches against the All Blacks resulted in injuries to their backs, and that has forced like early substitutions and resulting in players playing out of position. So yeah, it's an interesting one, and I feel like that's probably one of the reasons Springboks are very conservative in the style that they play. Because if you play a lot of kicking game, if you play a lot of forwards game, it saves your backs from being injured as well, right? So if you want the forwards to take the brunt of the hit, and then, you know, using the kicking game to kind of alleviate, you know, a lot of that pressure from directly applied to your back line. It's also, I think the strategy plays into the 6-2 split is in the sense that it protects the backs as well. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. Obviously some of you guys might argue against that, saying, you know, the high ball challenges from Kurtley Adensa was dangerous, but I would say that, you know, the way the Springboks play has been very conservative, the way they use their backs overall. So the next up, we've got, obviously the Springboks has announced the team to come to play the Banana Peels in Australia, and obviously last year they slipped twice against the Banana Peel, and hopefully this year they're looking to sweep up a win. Obviously people has to be dropped from the squad for the traveling tour, so some big names been dropped. The biggest one that a lot of fans has been crying about is Evan Roos. Evan Roos has been I think it was like maybe like the player of the year or something, voted by the fans for the URC, and he's basically had like one game against Wales, and now he's basically out of the squad. I felt like he should probably get that opportunity to start over Vermeulen, because his performance on the weekend was, let's be frank, not really the best, not outstanding at least. And so I felt like Evan Roos probably deserved the spot, but yeah, a lot of fans were not happy that Evan Roos got dropped. Obviously, there are other names being dropped, so Thomas Dutoit, Ruan Norjit, Marvin Ori, Bumwigi Banabi obviously injured, Rainer Elstad, and Grant Williams, and Ntuthuku Chutnu also has been dropped from the squad. One addition to the team was Kanan Moody, fills in for the winger position due to the injuries to the match suspension to Kurtley Adensa and the injuries to Cheslin Kobe. So he's like the backup plan for the Springboks at the moment. So he's probably going to get a start for Australia now, considering that Jesse Krill got HIA'd, so he might not be able to play. So, and obviously they're probably just going to put Lukami Arm on the wing, and then maybe have like, I don't know who's another center for the Springboks. Put Francois Stein on fullback, Ville Leroux on the bench, and what's his name? Willemse center, outside center. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, Willemse outside center. Bring back Stein, put him on the bench or put him on the fullback. And then put Lukami Arm on the wing. Problem solved. I just did your job for you. Jaku Johan, good luck. Good luck playing against the Banana Peels. So yeah, let's quickly go through the squad for the Springboks. Steven Kitsov, loose head prop, Vincent Koch, tight head prop off the bench, Franz Mahebe, tight head prop starting, Ox Inche gets the loose head prop position, Trevor Nyakani gets the other tight head / loose head prop option for the Springboks. The hookers, Joseph Dweba and Malcolm Marx, only 2 hookers. So if something happens to Malcolm Marx or something in training, then suddenly they have only 1 hooker. So that's actually a bit scary how they only got 2 hookers. I thought they surely would have brought another person. The locks, Ibn Esbeth, Lou Diacha, and then Salam Morat for the Stormers. And then we have the loose forwards, Petersef Detroit, Sia Khaleesi, Alright Lowe, Huaga Smith, Jasper Visa, and Dwayne, The Rock, Vermeulen. And in the utility forwards, I have Dion Fury. I thought Dion Fury is also another guy. I'm really happy to see him getting a shot at 35 years of age. Franco Boss. So it's not too late for me to make the Wallabies. I still have time to peak at 35 to make it to the Wallabies, guys. Maybe even the All Blacks. I don't know. That's possible for me now. Okay. And then in the back line, we have Faf de Klerk and Jaden Hendricks, Herschel Yanshis and Cobus Reiner. Four scrum halves. Jesus God, man. Fly halves, we have Elton Yanshis and Hunter Pollard. Probably just they're going to be holding a tackling bag. And in the midfielders, we have Lukamio Demi Delandi, and Andre Esterhuizen. So maybe Andre Esterhuizen will go to as a center, but I do feel like Damien Valencia is probably better, and just have Francois Stain at fullback. Makazula Mapimpi comes in at wing, Villaroo at fullback, Kanan Moody, a reserve for winger, and Warwick Khlant comes in for another wing spot. And utility backs, the greatest Springbok ever in the history of the Springboks, Damien Valenza, Jesse Krill, and Francois Stain. Francois Stain comes in at the last place for the Springboks. And obviously, let's go into the All Blacks. The All Blacks was under fire, okay? Dumpster fire for like 3-4 weeks now. You took the trip to Ellis Park to kind of like stamp out the fire a little bit. And obviously, there was a lot of criticism from the New Zealand media. So last week, Sir Graham Henry came out and basically, said that the criticism against the All Blacks is probably a bit too harsh and the fans should not turn their backs against the team so quickly. And it's about having that, he kind of coins it as the 5 million together as one team mentality. And currently he sees a lot of moaning and whinging by the Kiwis, and he wants that to kind of like stop. And also probably the biggest thing that he talked about in his little spiel is that the current Springbok team, he believes, is the best Springboks team ever. Yeah. This is the best Springboks team I have ever seen, according to Sir Graham Henry. Yeah. So there it is. There you go. The greatest Springboks team he's ever seen. And he has apparently been at Leinster Park in 1956. So yeah, so he kind of like also calls out, he kind of called out the fans a little bit to just be a bit too harsh on the team. Next up, we've got the future of Sir Fozzie has yet to be determined. So maybe tomorrow when you watch this, it's probably going to come out. When the results probably going to come out already. But as of me reporting this on Tuesday evening, Foster's fate has not been determined by New Zealand Rugby yet. So basically, Fozzie has yet to be told whether he's going to be let go or not, or whether he's basically left in limbo. He hasn't been confirmed to go ahead as coach, nor has he been told to let go. So basically, Fozzie says, in kind of like funny way, well, he's about to go home. He said basically, he's about to go home and mow the lawn around the pool. And what's going on here? And obviously, he's currently expecting to go to Christchurch and assemble the team on the weekend. So he's currently preparing to head to Christchurch to take on to get prepared to start preparation for Argentina. But he's completely left in limbo, and he's no idea what's the future. Obviously, this has angered a lot of people. People feel like New Zealand Rugby should have managed this a bit better. One of the biggest critics that came out is the former CEO of New Zealand Rugby, David Moffett, who kind of came out last week and told the current CEO Robinson, Scott Robinson, to resign, essentially for failing the New Zealand Rugby, to leave New Zealand Rugby in such a state. There was a lot of media that's being hurled at Fozzie and the All Blacks team, and the management kind of just like held, just stay silent and not really taking any of the blame. So he kind of felt like they left the team to dry. So obviously he's not happy about that. And once again, as a result of not giving an answer to Foster, he came out once again in a radio show to talk about how this is really, really poor form from New Zealand Rugby, essentially. And he basically said that, the fans think you should be, whether the fans think you should be Foster or should be Robinson, the matter of fact remains that Foster has been left out to dry by, he talks about, not Scott Robinson, what's his name? Yes, what is it, Scott Robinson? Because there's two Robinsons. So the New Zealand, the Crusaders head coach is Scott Robinson, Razor. Mark Robinson, is it Mark Robinson? Yeah, Mark Robinson is the CEO of New Zealand right now. So he's saying that whether it be Scott Robinson, the head coach of New Zealand, or not, the CEO, Mark Robinson, has left them both to dry. And it's really important for them to make a decision rather than just let him hang in limbo. He felt like, once again, this has been poorly managed, which led to a big media storm once again in New Zealand about the future of Sir Fozzie. I can imagine how painful this is for Fozzie, to not knowing what's going to happen in the next few days, whether he's going to go to work or not. It's quite an interesting dilemma to be in. But anyway, let's move on. So obviously the players actually showed a lot of positive support for Fozzie after the match. So Sam Kang basically came out after the match saying that everybody's working really hard. They felt very happy at camp and everybody's working hard, and he feel like some of the criticism is unwarranted. And as a result, he did say that he feels like the team is going to back Fozzie as the head coach. So interesting stuff. Whether that's going to be taken into consideration to New Zealand Rugby's decision or not too sure. But I do feel like, the Foster has a huge connection with a lot of these guys. I was speaking to my father. Foster has been in the New Zealand assistant coach for 16 years with Graham Henry, and after he's taken over in 2019, so he's almost approaching 20 years as a New Zealand head coach, and not New Zealand head coach, as New Zealand as a member of the New Zealand coaching team. He's almost approaching 20 years. So a lot of these players, their entire career started with Fozzie as part of the team. So they probably see him as a father figure, as a friend, and somebody they have a tremendous amount of respect to. So I'm not surprised if the team is backing up Fozzie in this regard. It's just a matter of whether or not how the New Zealand Rugby is going to handle this is going to be a very difficult matter regardless. Because you can imagine pretty much every, I wouldn't say a lot of the players, I would say pretty much like every one of the players started their career when Fozzie was one of the assistant coaches, and and some of these guys have 100 test caps now. So yeah, it's one of those things, man. It's one of the things. 20 years in the All Blacks almost. So you can imagine. Obviously, the All Blacks end of the year tour has been kind of confirmed. The first test match will be in Japan against Japan. So this will be a very interesting test match. This will be the 7th time the team played each other outside of Rugby World Cup. And the All Blacks will then go on to the European tour, which will play Wales again, Scotland and England in November. And yeah, this will be pretty interesting tour. Not playing Ireland again. Obviously, the rotation goes out of the window, and not playing France again. So saves the All Blacks from some tough matches. Finally, I think this is the last bit. Yeah, finally, with regards to transgender thing, they obviously last week, I think it was the week before now, the RFU, the England governing body for rugby union, the Rugby Football Union, basically voted to ban transgender athletes from competing in the female division. And basically this week, the IRFU, Irish Rugby Football Union, came out and also made the same ban from transgender athletes. And they basically made this, they basically based their decision on a recent peer-reviewed research, provided that the evidence basically showed that the people who were born male and who had the advantages of, you know, male puberty has shown significant advantages in strength, stamina, and physique brought by, you know, the male hormones. And even with testosterone suppression, it's still too much of an advantage. It's still an unfair advantage for to compete in female sports. So that's the research that's been showed, and they're gonna back the research to protect the women. And then obviously the other part of the equation is, are they allowed to participate in the male part of the sport? And in the answer is yes. The female who are born women and wants to be identified as men is allowed to compete in men's competition if they give some consent, and they're happy with the risk assessment that's been carried out. So the transgender, I don't even know which one is which. So women who are born, so people who are born women wants to compete in male sport, they're allowed. But people who are born male wanting to compete in women's sport, not allowed. So that's basically the result. So yeah, that is what it is. Let me know your thoughts on any of the articles, especially about the quota. Like, comment, and subscribe. We've got a bit of a week off, so I'll try to come up with some stuff to talk about this weekend. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Like, comment, and subscribe. Appreciate you being here, and see you guys a bit later. Cheers.